If you're unfamiliar, this is Christopher Hitchens. He debated the Catholic Church forever ago. I think this is probably 2006. That's my best guess. I'm not exactly sure. But he debated the Catholic Church and a British MP, a member of Parliament, the equivalent of a member of the House of Representatives, on whether or not the Catholic Church is a force for good. It was actually a fascinating debate and gave a lot of insight into some of the problems that the Catholic Church has not only let happen, but perpetrated. So I wanted to give it a listen and see what they had to say for themselves. This is not part one. If you haven't seen the other, don't sweat it. This stands independently of the rest. I'll provide context if it's missing. If you want to see which part this is, it should be in the title. This is part two. If you haven't seen the other, don't worry about it. This stands independently of the rest. I'll provide context if it's missing. So let's give this a listen. Oh, and while we do, we're going to play some Breath of the Wild, too. I'm just kind of going around getting Koroks and doing whatever, so.
Just run through one of the longest series of misrepresentations of the Catholic Church that I have heard in a long time.
Of course, she's got members of the Catholic Church clapping, right?
It really is, I think, quite telling that in coping with a motion which says the Catholic Church is a force for good in the world, he has to go back to the Crusades.
Oh, I mean, he included the Crusades. That's not how far back he went. He went back. Hell, he covered things that they're doing now that he didn't like, that are disgusting, that they will eventually apologize for. Yeah, he mentioned them because they deserve to be mentioned. But Christopher Hitchens did not rely on the Crusades as the crux of his argument. Now, something you may not be fully aware of, or something some people may not be fully aware of, is that Christianity went through a Reformation. Okay, there was a period of time where Christianity was basically, it operated a lot like Islam operates today. It was brutal and ugly, and they would do anything, literally anything, to force people to do what they want them to do, to believe the way they want them to believe, whatever it took to get their way. Over time, people, I think one of the things that kind of forced a Reformation was the disillusion of the centralized power in Christianity, which was at least in part due to the fact that Martin Luther nailed his theses to the wall and forced the Catholic Church to face the fact that they were wrong about some things. Quick interjection. I won't take long. I just wanted to tell you guys, YouTube's algorithm operates off of a few factors. Watch time, whether or not you subscribe, and whether or not you like something. So if you really want to help my channel, I would appreciate it if you guys watch the video to the end. If you don't watch it to the end, just watch a little bit longer than you would have otherwise. I would appreciate that very much. All right, let's get back to the video. So the Catholic Church, for the longest time, didn't allow people to have Bibles because they are the ones that are supposed to read the Bibles and interpret it. Not you, not your brother, not your uncle, the priest. If you are interpreting the Bible, you are going to get it wrong. That was their viewpoint. So people weren't allowed to have Bibles. If you wanted to, get close to God, you had to get close to the priest. That's how it worked back in the day. In fact, the Catholic Church was so powerful at one point in time that it controlled entire towns. Right? Like, literally every single person in town was Catholic. Everybody. And if you weren't Catholic, you couldn't buy anything. You couldn't go to the market. You couldn't rent a room. You couldn't do anything. And that was really the point of excommunication, too. The idea is that if they excommunicate you, you're expected to just wander out into the woods and die because you have no other choice. You have nowhere to go. You can't rent a room. You can't buy anything. You can't eat. You can't drink. You can't nothing. No one will say a word to you. That's the point of excommunication originally. And that, that was kind of the point of Jehovah's Witnesses instituting their shunning policy. They wanted you to wander off into the woods and die. Now, they can't control what people do by putting them in a jail cell or something, the way that the Catholic Church would back in the day for adultery or whatever. But they can absolutely, Jehovah's Witnesses today can absolutely force you out of your life, out of your friendships, force you out of your family's lives, your everything. So, anyway, the point is, the Catholic Church went through a reformation when their power base was broken apart by Martin Luther. He got his hands on the Bible, and I think he nailed 99 theses to the wall of a church or something, basically pointing out these different ways in which the Catholic Church completely misinterpreted the Bible. And that was the basis for the Protestant movement. And it broke up the power base and created competition, basically, within Christianity, which ultimately created a type of reformation. People could live their lives however they wanted to from that time forward. They were not beholden to the Catholic Church. They could do anything, right? Now, again, Islam has not gone through that reformation yet, unfortunately. It's going to take time. Maybe they never will. Who knows? But that means that the power base in Islam is very centralized and strict. And the leaders within Islam, there are different factions of Islam. There are Sunni and Shiite, and there are a bunch of different denominations of Islam. But they're all these denominations hate each other, and they're all separated from each other. They all live in different areas. Like the Muslims in Iran are they? I think they're Shiite. Yeah. Iran is a Shiite country. And the Shiites fight Sunnis. That's what happens. And the difference really is basically who should have taken authority, who should take power after Muhammad disappeared. Should it be Muhammad's son? Should it be his wife or his heir or whatever? It's something about who took control of Islam after. I don't even remember now. But anyways, the point is, Islam hasn't been through the same reformation. Now, Catholicism has a lot to answer for before they went through their reformation. A lot, including but not limited to the Crusades. But their hands are not clean even today, and Christopher Hitchens pointed that out quite succinctly, in my opinion.
In order to try and disprove it. Or, if that's slightly too far back, the sack of Constantinople.
You know what? Everything the Catholic Church did wrong should be apologized for. I don't give a shit how old it is. It should be apologized for. It should be accounted for. People shouldn't forget this. It was wrong then. It's wrong now. I don't care if it was 500 years ago or 1,000 or whatever. I don't care. You should apologize for the evil that you perpetrated in the world. She's acting like, oh, let's just forget about the Crusades, whatever. Who cares about the Crusades? It's irrelevant now. It was so long ago. Who cares? I care. And the people who died cared. That's who cared.
Can't actually look at the force that the Catholic Church is in the world today, but I do nevertheless want to join him on his ground, though not sharing any of his conclusions, and just look at some of the things which he has stated.
Please.
He has said, and actually, no pope pronouncing ex cathedra could ever sound more convinced of truth than when Christopher Hitchens utters something incredibly questionable. But he has said, with that certainty which characterizes his utterances, that the Catholic Church has had a history of anti-Semitism.
Hold on. After the Reformation, people had to follow the religion/denomination of their local princes. Catholic or Protestant states exist to this day in Germany. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not super familiar with how it all played out ultimately, but I know the power base was kind of destroyed eventually, and that led to a Reformation. Like I said, the Catholic Church still has a lot of power over certain people, still holds a lot of authority.
Let us just look at the record of the Catholic Church.
Let us look at the record. Of course, she's going to give us all the positive record. Okay, let's take a look.
When the Jewish community was under the most serious threat that it has faced in recent centuries. And just look at the role that the Catholic Church played in the last World War.
Okay, so let me explain the role that the Catholic Church played in the last World War, because people may not be fully aware of exactly what happened here. The Catholic Church started out being in favor of Hitler, working with Hitler, being on his side. They started out agreeing with him because they recognized the power that Hitler had. Now, eventually, Hitler realized that the Catholic Church had authority over these people and didn't like the fact that he didn't have authority over these people. So, over time, he encouraged the existence of his own kind of brand of church that already existed in Germany at the time, and started to deeply hate the Catholic Church, basically. The Catholic Church didn't flip on Hitler and start, not liking the guy until they realized that Hitler flipped on them. At which point, they started doing overtly anti-Hitler stuff. There was one specific day in the 1940s where the Vatican passed out a whole bunch of pamphlets or whatever that were to be read to every Catholic church in all of Germany at the same exact moment. They were supposed to be explain exactly how the Catholic Church felt about Hitler and what he was doing. That's when they turned on Hitler, in the 40s, when they realized that Hitler had turned on them in favor of this other church that already existed. So you cannot sit here and tell me that the Catholic Church stood in favor of Jews all the way back then. No, they didn't. They stood in favor of power. And when they saw the power flipping against them, they flipped against it too. But okay, let's hear your rewriting of the situation.
That the Catholic Church played in the last World War. Mr. Hitchens ignores the thousands of Jews who were secreted and rescued in churches and monasteries throughout Europe, at tremendous risk to the priests and the monks and the nuns who were hiding them.
Again, this was later on in the war after they had lost the favor of Hitler because he wanted the power that they already held for the people. And as Real Pumpkin J has to say here, my resident German, the Nazi Germany and Catholic priests, in Nazi Germany, the Catholic priests read a message against Hitler at the same day and time during the sermon. Right. It was on a little pamphlet. They were all supposed to read it. I remember reading about this. Unfortunately, the Protestant church was a national one instead of an international one, and they were more likely to follow the government guidance. There were martyrs on both sides of the denominational divide. Right. There were people who stood up against Hitler, and there were people who sided with Hitler. Absolutely, on both sides. So she's trying to, take this as a W, the Catholics stood against Hitler from day one. No, they didn't. The Catholics actually worked with Hitler for a long, long time until they saw the writing on the wall, if you will. No pun intended. Well, I guess there wasn't a pun. No joke intended there. They saw the writing on the wall and realized that, they were losing their power base. So that's what it was really all about, ultimately.
He ignores the 3,000 Jews who, in the course of that conflict, took refuge in the Pope's own summer palace. He contradicts flatly the statement of so many prominent Jews after 1945, who expressed gratitude to Pius XII, even to the extent of sending the Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra to stage a concert in the Pope's honour. Not, I think, something that they would have done if they had thought he had been anti-Semitic.
Again, Hitler challenged the Pope's power. I'm sorry, Hitler challenged the Pope's power base, and he didn't like that, and eventually there was a split. But for a very, very long time, they were on each other's sides. You can pretend otherwise all you want, but it's nonsense.
But rather they recognized that the Catholic Church throughout that period acted within the limitations of the time as a force for good.
After they had already gotten a bunch of Jews killed. Sure, I suppose they acted properly after that.
Martin Gilbert and Michael Burley, historians of very considerable repute, point to the large number of Catholics who found themselves in Dachau.
Dachau, if you don't know, was a death camp. It was one of, I think, 12 death camps in Germany, or in German territory at least. Any priest can become pope. Members of the College of Cardinals, over 85 years, vote in a locked room. Votes get burned to black smoke until a choice is made. There you go. That's what I thought. That added a little bit of context. I appreciate that, Real Pumpkin J. Were you Catholic originally? I'm not sure how you're so well versed on the history of the Catholic Church and stuff, or do you just study this stuff? It's kind of interesting, particularly the history of the Catholic Church in Germany. That's interesting.
And of course, we should remember that any Christian, not just Catholic, but any Christian joining the SS had first to renounce his faith.
I mean, like I said, all of this was eventual. Like, Catholicism cooperated with the Nazi Party for a time. Although I guess, they did come out against Catholics, and Catholics came out against them and everything, but Catholics were contributing for a while, so.
So I do not think that a charge of anti-Semitism can stand up. Yes, it is quite true that the New Testament says that the first century Sanhedrin made a very major contribution to the death of Christ. So also did the Romans.
Yeah, and you think they're considered good guys? Really? The Romans did. Are you trying to say, what, you're not the only bad guys? What's your point here? The Romans, if you're unfamiliar, seriously persecuted Christians back in the day. And that's what the book of Revelation was all about. In fact, I'm releasing a video on my main channel where I talk about the book of Revelation and what it actually meant from a biblical scholar. He explains the whole thing, Bart Ehrman, what the numbers 666 and 616 meant and everything, the whole nine. If you want to see, you can check that. It's on my Owen Morgan Telltale channel. It hasn't released as of this moment, but the title is... Wait, what is it? Who is the Antichrist from Revelation really? And it's got a picture of Greg Locke in the thumbnail because it was about something Greg Locke was saying. So, anyways, yeah.
And indeed, it's Pontius Pilate that we remember in the Creed every Sunday, not the Sanhedrin.
Okay, I don't care. You blamed Jesus. I'm sorry, you blamed Jews for Jesus' death. I don't care what you claim you believe or who you remember or any of that shit. You blamed Jews for Jesus' death for who knows how long, for like ever. And it contributed to the hatred of the Jews. That's on you.
Creed every Sunday, not the Sanhedrin. Yet I do not recall Mr. Hitchens suggesting that because of that, the modern Catholic Church is anti-Italian.
That's because you didn't run a stochastic terrorism campaign against Italians. You ran a stochastic terrorism campaign against Jews for a long, long time. She's pretending she doesn't even know what this is. Like, oh, we didn't say anything bad about Jews the whole time. What are you talking about? We've been just as upset about this and that and the other thing as we were about Jews. You're just full of it. It's ridiculous, dude. Like, come on. She's just looking for some way to justify the heinous behavior of the Catholic Church. Disgusting. Disgusting behavior.
I rather thought it was quite pro-Italian. He also suggests that the Pope welcomed back a Holocaust-denying bishop.
Yes, Williamson, I think was his name. We looked him up, so yeah, he was a Holocaust denier, and is a Holocaust denier, and did welcome him back. He's a conspiracy theorist to the core, that dude is.
Let us first remember that the bishop in question was originally expelled for disobedience.
Oh, so it wasn't the Holocaust denialism that you guys had a problem with, is what you're saying. Okay. Well, do you think that's helping your case, or?
Upon being reinstated and upon reiterating his views, the Pope, a fact conveniently ignored by Mr. Hitchens, commanded him to repent, commanded him to deny what he had said.
Okay, wow. What a big deal. You've been commanded to deny what you've said and repent? Wow. And they let him back in, you say? Okay, go on.
You would think from listening to Mr. Hitchens that the Catholic Church alone has been responsible for atrocities throughout history.
Oh, it has. Yes, absolutely. And if you deny that, you live in a fantasy land.
If you are going to judge the Catholic Church at any given stage in history, then you have to judge it against the standards that were...
No. Stop there. I don't have to judge it against anything. I have to judge it for what it has done. That's it. No moral relativism. No, well, they did it too. No whataboutism. I don't give a shit about any of that. What I give a shit about is the fact that the Catholic Church controlled entire towns and tried to get people to wander off into the woods and die if they disagreed with what they said. What I care about is the fact that the Catholic Church forced people to convert by the sword. They would murder your ass if you refused to believe what they had to say. What I care about is the fact that they contributed to the mass death and suffering of countless people, and currently, right now, still, to this day, are denying use of condoms in AIDS and HIV-riddled Africa. You think you're helping?
Prevailing at the time.
Okay, let's step back, listen to the whole sentence. I kind of cut her off there.
You have to judge it against the standards that were prevailing at the time.
No, you don't.
And condemning the Inquisition, which was a horrible thing. Condemning the Inquisition in isolation from condemning just about the whole, in fact the whole, of European society, which at that time rejoiced in punishment and torture as a means of dealing with criminality and with treason and with wrongdoing.
Okay, so I guess what is she saying? Is she saying that like all of Europe at the time, like when the Crusades were happening, believed that killing people was good, so the Crusades weren't as bad as you think they were? Is that... I mean, I'm trying to pick up what she's putting down here.
To try and divorce the Catholic Church from that and say that it was uniquely guilty.
I don't care if it's uniquely guilty. This is whataboutism, by the way, is what this is called. It's guilty. That's the point here. The Catholic Church is guilty, which seems to be something she's admitting to right now, right? She's admitting the Catholic Church is guilty. So boom, right there. Lost the debate. Thank you for acknowledging my point.
Under the Inquisition is simply trying to look back at centuries gone past and apply a standard that nobody applied at the time.
Again, that's not even like the crux of his argument. He brought up the Crusades in passing. Christopher Hitchens pointed out a whole bunch of stuff that she's completely ignoring and pretending were never brought up, like the child mistreatment and, hell, what was the other stuff? Oh my God, I can't remember. The mistreatment of gay people, the way that they shuttled people around from parish to protect them from prosecution. I mean, there are like a billion things that the Catholic Church is doing now. The way that they demonized condoms in Africa. I mean, there's a list the size of my arm of problems with the Catholic Church that are happening right now, today. And she's completely ignoring it. She's talking about the Crusades. Why the hell are you bringing up the Crusades right now? Come on, move on. Would you rather watch a tree grow or a knee grow? Probably a knee. I imagine a knee would grow faster.
And coming nearer to our day, of course, Christopher Hitchens is right. And who could possibly dispute with him that the abuse of children, of innocent children, is one, in fact, it is the worst offense that anybody can commit.
Yes. So why did you, as, you know, I mean, she's representing or protecting the Catholic Church here, so I'm going to refer to her as the thing she's defending. Why did you defend the Catholic Church when they moved priests around to different parishes to protect them from prosecution? They were caught dead to rights abusing children. And what did you do? You moved them to a different country entirely. A different country, okay? Unacceptable.
Of that, no doubt. But again, he seems to think that the Catholic Church should have had some unique insight, which demonstrably was lacking in society as a whole, and I'll give examples, at the time.
No, I don't. Well, I mean, the Catholic Church claims to have unique insights, so there's that, but they don't even need unique insights. You need to not move child abusers out of the country to protect them from prosecution that they deserve. That's what you need to do. That's it. You don't need supernatural insight or any of that other shit. All you need is common sense and common decency.
Let's remember that in the 1970s, not the Crusades, not the sack of Constantinople, but in the 1970s, the National Council for Civil Liberties in this country allowed the paedophile information exchange to affiliate to it. And the National Council for Civil Liberties had extremely respectable people at its head, including Harriet Harman and Patricia Hewitt.
Okay, I don't know who these people are or why I should care, but go on, I suppose.
Would anybody seriously say that they condone child abuse?
I have no idea.
They were acting in the ignorance of the time.
No, there was no quote-unquote ignorance of the time. You moved priests to different areas so that they didn't have to face prosecution. That's straight up wrong. There is no justification for that.
Magistrates at that time, magistrates, some didn't even get before judges sometimes. Magistrates were awarding a few months in prison for that heinous crime. I myself, in the 1980s, trained as a Samaritan. One of the things we were taught was how to handle it when we got callers about child abuse. We were not taught then, because they didn't know, that actually there was no way that somebody who abused would simply stop. And it was only in the mid-1990s, and don't I know it because I was in the Home Office at the time, that we actually introduced in this country a register of sex.
Okay, fair enough. Sure, yes. Maybe all the way back then. I'm willing to grant that. I don't know if it's true, but sure. Let's just grant it for the sake of argument. Why did you move them to different parishes? Why did you move priests from Massachusetts to an entirely different country when they were under investigation and about to be prosecuted for their crimes against children? Why did you do that? That has nothing to do with, oh, we just didn't know. The problem that I have here is the fact that you knew and moved people around anyways.
Sex offenders. Do not expect the Catholic Church somehow, when that was the state of knowledge at the time, to have acted in a unique and completely different way. In retrospect...
Well, you tell us that you have supernatural insight into things. You tell us you have God's ear, or that God has your ear, or whatever the hell. Somebody's ear is connected to God's ear, or something like that. You tell us. You said it. You said that you have supernatural knowledge on these subjects because you are the mouthpieces for God on earth, or whatever. We're not the ones that claimed it. You are. So there should be no, in retrospect, yep. It should just be, you knew not to do that shit. You knew not to move people from parish to protect them from prosecution. That's what it should be. But here we sit, with you defending them. Real Pumpkin J, I was raised Catholic in Germany. Okay, that explains it. Thanks for the context there.
In a unique and completely different way. In retrospect, yes, of course. In retrospect, yup. In retrospect, it should have done. So should the magistrates. So should the Samaritans.
Yeah, but you're the only ones that claim supernatural communication, supernatural information, or whatever the hell. You claim that. The magistrates don't.
So should the National Council of Civil Liberties. But when we ask whether the Catholic Church is a force for good, let's just try to imagine a world today without, for example, the billions of pounds that are poured into overseas aid by the Catholic Church.
Oh, you think that money wouldn't go into charitable contributions if the Catholic Church didn't exist? Of course it would. Where do you think you got that money? You got that money from people in your church that had extra to spare, that had money to donate. Or you demanded that money, I suppose. But the vast majority of the money that you've been given as the Catholic Church went into the Vatican's overall wealth. It didn't go into charitable contributions. So actually, the world may be an even better place without the Catholic Church, in all seriousness. We may be better off without it. We may have more charitable contributions.
Contributing year on year more than any single nation.
You better be, with all the money that you suckered people out of. Yeah, I'd hope so. I would hope that you're giving a whole bunch of that. It's certainly not enough. It's not proportional to how much you're taking in. You're keeping an awful lot of it. But you damn well better be putting some of that money into charitable contributions. That's like the bare minimum.
Imagine the developing world had been left without the input of the medicine and the education that was brought to it by the missions.
Oh, somebody else would be down there helping them. And honestly, maybe they'd be even better off if it wasn't the Catholic Church. They'd certainly be better off if it wasn't the Catholic Church. Absolutely, without a doubt. She's pretending that, like, only the Catholic Church would ever do any of this charitable work. Like, what a joke, man.
Imagine the absence of those collections Sunday upon Sunday for famine relief. Imagine the absence of the church in the local community. I know well that when I was in the Department of Employment and in the Home Office, and we were setting up initiatives, single regeneration budget, whatever it might be, we relied on the church, churches, every bit as much as we relied on local councils and on other organizations.
Well, take all of that money that the Catholic Church has, distribute it to charitable organizations, and get them out there to help instead of your ass.
We play a vital role, and you don't need to be a Catholic to acknowledge that we play that role. What is the church? It is its members. It is the nuns and the monks and the priests and the lay workers and the congregations. It is not just the hierarchy of the church. And I believe that the church to which I belong is a massive, massive force for good. But
well, you are incorrect, good madam.
let us not just keep the debate at that level. I knew somehow that when we were here tonight, we would be discussing child abuse and condoms.
Really? You knew that? How did you know that? Why would you think such a thing? Oh, you must have, you've got, what is it? You must have premonitions. You must be a psychic or something to see that coming. Who could have seen that coming, that they would bring up child abuse and condoms? Wow. You're a smart one. You are a smart one.
Came in the end. I was almost thought we were going to get through an entire speech without condoms from Christopher Hitchens, but we got them at the end.
Well, why wouldn't you? Of course. You are contributing to the what's the phrase I'm looking for here? You are contributing to people's suffering in society. You're contributing to people dying, the spread of illness. That's the word I was looking for. You're contributing to a what I believe is categorized as a pandemic at the moment, right? You're helping that pandemic spread right now. That's what you're doing. I hope you're proud of yourselves. Yeah, let's all thank the Catholic Church. They're fantastic. They've helped everybody. Good job, Catholic Church.
If he has a creed, it would be, I believe in condoms.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Why not?
So, but that is not what the Catholic Church is about. It isn't only about the physical relief of the poor. It isn't only about the work it does on earth, but it is the message that it preaches. And that message is one of hope. That message is one of salvation. And it is all very well for some people in their intellectual arrogance to say, we can do without that. But actually, billions of people across the world live by that message of hope and of salvation.
Sure, they do. But guess what? If the Catholic Church didn't exist, do you think that these people wouldn't have any other source of hope or interest or any other whatever? You think their money wouldn't go to something else? You think that they wouldn't contribute charitably to other things? You must be joking. You live in a fantasy land if you think that the Catholic Church is like the only source that could possibly make this stuff happen.
They try to live by the commandments and also by the interpretation of those commandments by Christ. Yeah, sometimes they fail. Sometimes their leaders fail. Human beings do fail. But overwhelmingly, I say to you tonight with no apology or whatever, that a world without the Catholic Church would be poorer, would be more hopeless.
No, that money would be going into other things, and it would be the majority of the money rather than what's currently going into these charitable donations and contributions and stuff, which is a fraction of the money that's given to the Catholic Church. A fraction.
And would be a worse place in which to live.
Okay, so she just condemned the Crusades, and that's it. That was her whole bit. Awesome. Look at this gigantic, ornate, beautiful building. This is the kind of thing that you see from Catholic churches. Is it? Ooh, there was a weird glare just now. Is this a Catholic church that this is happening in? I'm not really sure.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Anne Widdicombe. And our final speaker is against the motion that the Catholic Church is a force for good in the world.
Yeah, this is Stephen Fry.
An all-rounder, really. Stephen can turn his hand to many things. Very popular with his legions of fans.
He is extremely popular, yeah, in Britain particularly. He is a very well-known broadcaster, absolutely.
Stephen, let's hear your views. See how well you do in the popularity stakes with people in the Vatican.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are occasions, as Gwendolen remarked, in The Importance of Being Earnest, when it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind, it becomes a pleasure.
Oh, that's funny. It's more than a moral duty, it's a pleasure. Love it.
And this is one such occasion with my trusty Hitch by my side. I am very proud to be here, but also very nervous, very worried. I've been nervous all day, and the reason I've been nervous is quite simple, and that is that this motion matters to me. It matters to me greatly. It's not a joke, it's not a game, it's not just a debate. I genuinely believe that the Catholic Church is not, to put it at its mildest, a force for good in the world. And therefore it is important for me to try and marshal my facts as well I can to explain why I think that. But I want first of all to say that I have no quarrel, no argument, and I wish to express no contempt for individual devout and pious members of that church. They are welcome to their sacraments, they're welcome to their reliquaries and to their Blessed Virgin Mary. They're welcome to their faith, to the importance they place in it, to the comfort and the joy that they receive from it. All of that is absolutely fine by me. It would be impertinent and wrong of me to express any antagonism towards any individual who wishes to find salvation in whatever form they wish to express it. That, to me, is sacrosanct as much as any article of faith is sacrosanct to anyone of any church or any faith in the world. It's very important. It's also very important to me, as it happens, that I have my own beliefs. They are a belief in the Enlightenment. They are a belief in the eternal adventure of trying to discover moral truth in the world. Discover. It's a terribly important word to which we might return. It's a fight, it's an empirical fight. It's one that was begun in the middle of the last millennium. It's given the name the Enlightenment. And there is nothing, sadly, that the
Enlightenment is commonly viewed as like the Reformation, or when the power base of Christianity was largely broken. The Enlightenment founders were Thomas Jefferson and some other famous specific people. Major figures: David Hume, Denis Diderot, Cesare Beccaria, Adam Smith, Hugo Grotius. Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, John Locke. These are all Enlightenment thinkers. The Age of Enlightenment started in 1685, I guess, and went all the way through the 1700s, the early 1800s, and the basic idea behind it was you don't need God to find moral value or to answer questions in life, basically. That's the bottom line. I love Voltaire. Anarcho-capitalist on Twitch says he likes John Locke. I'm a huge Voltaire fan. Oh my God. Voltaire is hilarious. Have you guys ever read any Voltaire quotes? He was an atheist before atheism was popular, before anybody else was an atheist, really. And Voltaire is just fantastic, dude. I love the guy. I'm trying to find some good Voltaire quotes here. Those who can make people believe absurdities can make people commit atrocities. Judge a man by his questions rather than by his answers. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Okay, that's the same as the first one. Dare to think for yourself. When it's a question of money, everybody is of the same religion. Again, he was an atheist, a famous atheist. I think, when was Voltaire alive? He was born in 1694, died in 1778 in Paris. So he was probably around for the start of the Revolutionary War, but yeah, he was on his deathbed. Men must have somewhat altered the course of nature, for they were not born wolves, yet they have become wolves. God did not give them 24-pounders or bayonets, yet they've made themselves bayonets and guns to destroy each other. In the same category I place not only bankruptcies, but the law which carries off the bankrupt's effects so as to defraud their creditors. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, he was an interesting guy, Voltaire was, anyways. If you, again, Age of Enlightenment thinker, if you want to learn more about him, he's got an interesting read behind him. So let's continue listening here.
It's given the name the Enlightenment, and there is nothing...
Sorry, let's step back a little more.
Discover. It's a terribly important word to which we might return. It's a fight, it's an empirical fight. It's one that was begun in the middle of the last millennium. It's given the
1685, roughly.
Name the Enlightenment. And there is nothing, sadly, that the Catholic Church and its hierarchs likes to do more than to attack the Enlightenment. It did so at the time. Reference was made to Galileo and the fact that he was tortured for trying to explain the Copernican theory of the universe. That's history. History, as Miss Widdicombe has reminded us, is irrelevant. It's not important. All that matters now is that billions of pounds go out of this extraordinary institution to relieve the poor around the world and make the world a better place.
Stephen Fry is calling out to history here, which is a fine strategy. He's absolutely correct. But we don't need to look at history to look at the evils and the wrongs of the Catholic Church. We can look at what they're doing right now, today, at this immediate moment. The Catholic Church has done so much wrong and is currently doing wrong.
Is of no importance whatsoever. Well, I beg to differ. History whinnies and quivers and vibrates in all of us, in this hall, in this square mile. Let's think about this square mile. I'll come back to it in a moment. But first, Christopher made mention of limbo. It seems so tedious and so silly, one of those little casuistic games that Thomists and others play. Aquinas and Augustine of Hippo both proposed...
He just named a couple of really famous old Catholic priests, if you were unfamiliar.
This extraordinary idea...
Or religious thinkers, at the very least. Famous religious thinkers.
Babies of Hippo both proposed this extraordinary idea that babies who were unbaptized would not know heaven. They also proposed the idea of purgatory, which doesn't exist in the Bible.
Well, hell doesn't exist in the Bible either, actually, as it turns out. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but hell was just hell is a doctrine that was derived from a bunch of, other ideas that is based on faulty premises and nonsense. There is no hell in the Bible.
Absolutely no evidence for it. However, what an extraordinary, brilliant coup to imagine such a thing as purgatory. That a soul needs to be prayed for in order to go to heaven, in order to turn left when he enters the aeroplane of heaven and get a first-class seat. That he needs to be prayed for, and for many hundreds, indeed over 1,000 years, you'll be amazed what generous terms those prayers came at.
People are laughing, but this dude's not joking. He's saying it in a funny way, so it's fair to laugh, but he's dead serious in the way that this is being framed. This is real. Okay, this is really what people believe.
Sometimes as little or as 2/3 of a year's salary could ensure that a dead loved one would go to heaven. And money could ensure that your baby, your dead child, your dead uncle, your dead mother could go to heaven.
Jeez, dude, 2/3 of a year's salary? What was that? What would that be today? So average is $55,000, I think, a year. So what would that be roughly? Let's say $36,000, the equivalent of $36,000. You can pray your loved one into heaven. How whacked out is that shit, man? Really?
Your dead child, your dead uncle, your dead mother could go to heaven. And if you were rich enough, you could have a chantry built, and monks would permanently sing prayers so that existence in heaven for the child would go up and up and up until they were at the table of the Lord themselves. Now,
yeah, so if you had enough money, you could get priests to pray for your kid. Really? It was about money the whole time. And what's the Catholic Church doing with that money, or what did they do with that money? Lined their pockets. They lined their pockets. The Vatican is one of the richest establishments, or one of the richest, I think it's a country. The Pope is one of the richest people on planet Earth. We don't even know what, the Catholic Church is worth. We don't know what the Vatican has exactly because they won't tell us. But people speculate it's in the trillions maybe. And the old shit that they have in their libraries and stuff, oh my God, dude. But yeah, they spent a couple $100 million of the literally billions and billions and maybe even trillions that they had on mission trips. That was nice of them, huh? How super nice of the Catholic Church to spend that money. Wow. Couple $100 million maybe out of the maybe trillions that they have. They're so generous, aren't they?
All this is in the past and is irrelevant. I cede to Anne Widdecombe how irrelevant it is, except in one thing. This church is founded on the principle of intercession. Only through the apostolic succession, only through the laying on of hands from this Galilean carpenter, whom we can all admire.
It's a Galilean carpenter being Jesus. And he's saying they believe in intercession. Intercessionary prayer means that they step in, they intercede, they try to correct problems for you. So a priest needs to intercede for you on your behalf to God. So he's going to intercede to God for you, that basically is what he's saying right now.
Only from the laying on of hands to his apostles, to St. Peter, to the other bishops, all the way down to everyone consecrated in this room. Anyone ordained here will know they have this extraordinary power to change the molecules of wine into blood, literally, to change the molecules of paste bread into flesh, literally.
That's one of the more wild beliefs, in my opinion. They can literally change crackers and wine into blood. And when we discovered DNA testing or invented DNA testing, not even that long ago, back in the 90s, I think, or 2000s, didn't the Catholic Church just refuse to let them test it? They're like, nope. It's God's blood and flesh. That's all you need to know. We don't need to do any testing on this. We're sure of it. Just trust us. Has anybody ever DNA tested consecration? If you were to do a DNA test on a consecrated host, would I find human flesh? Well, obviously you wouldn't, but I'm wondering if anyone's ever done it. The consecrated host is a cookie and some wine. If there's any DNA still present in it, it would be wheat, grape, and yeast DNA. Yeah, exactly. Eucharist, that's what it's called. Eucharist. Eucharistic miracle. I mean, I'm looking here. I can't find an example of somebody doing a DNA test on the cracker. If they did, they would find that there was no, Jesus DNA up in there anywhere.
And to forgive the sins of the peasants and the poor whom they routinely exploit around the planet.
Yep.
Only this church has this extraordinary principle that it is through these male priests, and only male priests,
Yes, absolutely. That's a good point.
that this is given. It is a doctrinal fact. It is more than a doctrinal fact. It is a dogma. Extra ecclesiam nulla salus. Outside the church, there is no salvation. That is a dogma of the church that has been used to excuse all the missionary zeal, all the rape and torture of the Aztecs and the Incas, all the horrors of South America and
Through crusades, yeah.
Africa and the Philippines and the rest of the world, to which other churches and other cultures have also their guilt to admit. It's not unique to the Catholic Church, and I never said it was, and the motion doesn't say it was, or at least the opposition of the motion does not arrogate to the Catholic Church uniquely this sin. However, the particular nature of the exploitation of the poor, the vulnerable, and the young, if I were to talk to a priest now, believe me, that priest would be the most worldly, charming, self-deprecating, snobbish in a Ronald Knox, Alfred Gilby sort of way. He would be lovely. He would smoke. Gosh, how daring. He would be a sort of ha-ha-ha priest, and the superstition and the nonsense that we read about of the church, it's absolute. Don't pay any attention, Stephen. Just join Farm Street or the Brompton Oratory and have a marvelous time as a Catholic, and everything is lovely and splendid. But
Yeah, that is the view that they want people to have of the Catholic Church. This funny, joyful, ha ha ha, we have a good time, we love everybody kind of thing. Jehovah's Witnesses want you to have the same view of their religion. In reality, it's not like that at all.
be poor and ignorant, and my goodness me, every single detail of damnation and original sin, and of any possibility of your complaining or asking to think for yourself. I said, let's think of this square mile. Just imagine in this square mile how many people were burned for reading the Bible in English.
Right, because you weren't allowed to own a Bible. You had to get your interpretations from a priest. Back in the day, of course.
And one of the principal burners and torturers of those who tried to read the Bible in English here in London was Thomas More. You may.
Oh, I guess they're doing this in London. Interesting. Thomas More. I'm actually unfamiliar with the name, surprisingly. I usually keep up with this kind of thing, but yeah. Wow, interesting. Just imagine how many people were burned to death by the Catholic Church for reading the Bible. In that square mile. It's really interesting to think about and horrific, right? Interesting and horrific to think about at the same time. I think that's a boomerang. I don't know if you guys know this little trick, but what I'm doing right now in Zelda, I may cut this out later, but I'm in the depths, and there are pedestals that have ghost warriors that hold pristine weapons that are not like decayed or damaged or whatever. Before you can find one of these weapons in the depths held by a ghost warrior, you have to have found the decayed version on the surface and destroyed it. Different areas hold different types of weapons. Like down in Gerudo, you can find the Gerudo scimitar, which is an extremely powerful weapon. In this area here, you can find royal broadswords and royal guard swords. That's what I'm looking for now. Not very many of them. In this area, you can find boomerangs. You can find feathered spears. Any Rito-related feathered edge. That type of thing. And then over here, you can find like cobble crushers and stuff like that. Because it's the Goron area. So in Lurelin Village, I think they have their own thing. I forget what it is exactly, but yeah. Oh, and Kakariko Village, since it's a Sheikah area, you can find Sheikah weapons like the Eightfold Blade, the stuff held by the Yiga clan. So anyway, I am in this area looking for a royal broadsword, and what I'm going to do is I found the pedestal. Oh, I already loaded it in, son of a bitch. I found the pedestal. I'm going to keep reloading until the Ghost Warrior is holding the weapon that I want. That's what I'm doing. Anarcho-capitalist. From Wikipedia, transubstantiation is, according to the teaching of the Catholic Church, the change of the whole substance of bread into the substance of the body of Christ, and of the whole substance of wine into the substance of the blood of Christ. Right. So the Catholic Church believes that it literally turns into Jesus' body and blood. Literally. It's actually Jesus' body and blood. Okay, now if you look here, I'm not going to pick it up, but it's a Royal Guard sword. I don't want this. That's an extremely valuable weapon usually, but I want the Royal broadsword instead of the Royal Guard's sword, the yellow one, because it has higher flurry rush damage, double damage basically. So anyway, yeah. We don't believe it becomes physical flesh, not physically. Well, you used to at the very least. I don't know if you do now or not, but you did. I guess since DNA testing you changed your mind.
I know if you've read the novel Wolf Hall, which won the Man Booker Prize just the other day. Now, that's a long time ago. It's not relevant, except that it was only last century that Thomas More was made a saint, and it was only in the year 2000 that the last pope, the Pole, he made Thomas More the patron saint of politicians. This is a man who put people on the rack for daring to own a Bible in English.
Now, if you don't know what the rack is, it's horrific. To my understanding, the rack was basically this thing. It was a torture device, a kind of a medieval torture device, which, oh boy, those medieval torture devices have some, they're pretty bad, man. There's something called quartering, I believe, where they would tie each limb to a different horse, and then they would whip all four horses until you're basically pulled apart. The rack, I believe, is where they tie your arms to the top, your legs to the bottom. I think that's what the rack was. And they turn a wheel, which expands it. See, I have my thing set to detect Royal Broadsword, and it's going off now, which means I finally found the Royal Broadsword. That's what I was looking for. I accidentally broke one earlier, so I had to find another one. So I'm going to save a hard save before picking it up, because I can reload at that hard save if it doesn't have what I want, the modifier. It did, though. That's a good modifier. Plus 34 attacks up, so yeah, that's good. I don't know if you read this before since my internet cut out, but did you see the Patriot Front leak of the leader's Sieg Heil? I did see your message, and I forgot to mention it. Shows that no matter what, right-wing groups are rooted in hate. Oh, yes, absolutely they are. Oh my god, I forget who Unicorn Riot is. It's the reporting arm of something. It's a decentralized, non-profit, left-wing media collective that originated online in 2015. Group is known for reporting on far-right organizations and sources of racial and economic injustice in the U.S. I think that Unicorn Riot is basically, it's decentralized. I think it's Antifa's media arm or something like that. Okay, check this out.
It's a new implements today. I fucked up. Starting over.
Keep it rolling. Har, dar, dar.
Our national way of life faces complete annihilation as our culture and heritage are attacked from all sides. From the many individuals...
Heritage. What heritage? You talking, what, Scottish heritage? What heritage are we talking about specifically right now? Of course we're talking about white heritage. They believe that white people are being erased because they're right-wing extremists, and that's the kind of thing right-wing extremists think, say, do, and believe.
Of our people, a collective will emerge, a network linking the faithful of our people together in strength and unity. Within these bounds, we will begin the creation of our grand vision. Politics have played a large part in destroying this nation, and it will not be politics that will save us. The state that governs us is wholly resistant to the change that is required to save the nation as it convulses and devours itself with unprecedented corruption. This nation once sought freedom from a tyrannical global power, and those who fought for liberty dedicated their efforts to the people they served rather than the government that denied them a future. Our people have conquered injustice before, both with...
Okay, this is all just right-wing propaganda so far, it seems, and it's just like fear-mongering garbage. They're just deathly afraid that they're going to be erased or some shit, something that's just not happening. But okay, let's keep listening, I suppose.
Within our lands and within ourselves. Tyranny wields a new implements today, yet it bears the same ugly face. Americans are on the threshold of becoming a conquered people.
Americans are on the threshold to becoming a conquered people, i.e., there are too many Mexicans, there are too many black people, and not enough white people. We need to create a white ethno-state. That's what these people want, in all seriousness, really. If you don't know Patriot Front, that's what they're shooting for, a white ethno-state. It's really, really sick shit.
No foreign state waved its banner on the halls of governance, yet it was our flag which grew foreign as the years passed. A new tyranny must be met with new resistance. America needs a generation of brave men to fearlessly rise to face all threats to their collective interests. A generation steeled in their effort to realize their grand vision of a new nation. This gathering of the faithful, the true inheritors of America, will urge our people onward. To form a new and just state, we must first instill a reformed national spirit within our people, a people free from the vices of the modern world, and a people with a fervor to see themselves free. The cohesion and unity of our people will be the most powerful weapon to be used in our tireless struggle for the nation and its timeless cause.
God, these people need help, dude, for real. This is insane. They live in a fantasy where they're like the persecuted minority. Get help, people. Get help. I'm waiting for the Sieg Heil. We're almost through this video. It's only 3 minutes.
Every soul who embodies the struggle will be an indispensable component of our unified effort for national sovereignty and collective liberty. Life.
No, again, by the way, notice what we're looking at here in the background. We've got 4 guys just standing there with their arms crossed, showing solidarity and unity and everything. They believe themselves to be an army, and again, they named themselves after the Rwandan Patriots Front. They named themselves after a group that basically forced political control. They took political control over a government like at the barrel of a gun, basically. And that's kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? The thing that they're trying to portray. The thing that they're fighting for here.
Unified effort for national sovereignty and collective liberty. Life, liberty, victory.
Life, liberty, victory!
Want to check it out?
Damn, son, that might be a cut.
That's
a
good take right there.
Sieg fucking Heil, let's fucking go.
Ooh boy, Sieg fucking Heil. Let's fucking go. Wow.
A cut.
That's a good take right there.
Sieg fucking Heil, let's fucking go. I can say that now that it's over.
I want to have my finger like
I can say it now that it's over. You catch that? Wow, man. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, so they're Nazis. I think that's pretty clear, right? These people are Nazis. That doesn't get much clearer than that. Anyway, if you were wondering about, Patriot Front, you weren't sure if they were Nazis or not, you didn't know, there you go. I mean, doesn't get clearer than that, does it?